Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, let's get right into it. Greetings, grimdark enjoyers, and welcome to the second of these chats where I'm joined by Maka of the Outer Circle and North of Northern Exile. Links to their
Hello.
channels in the description. Today's topic, or at least where we're starting, is are Space Marines, and maybe Primarchs to a degree, too human in their representation in the lore?
Ooh,
Oh, yeah, okay.
ooh.
I remember the question. So, spoilers to the viewers. We have discussed some different topic ideas in group chat outside of the episodes, and wasn't sure. I don't think North, you were sure either what the episode was going to be about. So, this has been dropped on us like a hot potato in the best of ways because we haven't
Which
really
you,
thought
which
of an
you
answer.
requested, by the way. This isn't haven't been left out to dry. We requested it to make sure it was all, organic.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. But good question. Who wants
Mhm.
to start?
I can start us off by talking about one character that I didn't like, who was very, very human, and that was Solomon, one of the new Alpha Legion characters by Mike Brooks. This was in the book. I think it was Harrow Master. I read it a couple of months ago now, and this guy was extremely human. He is a Chaos Legionnaire who is good to his serfs. He has very stringent left-leaning political views for some reason as a Chaos Space Marine. He's all about equality and
Equality
making sure
for all.
everyone's
Oh,
nice to
wow.
each other. Yeah, everyone's nice to each other. The Alpha Legion aren't going to be a load of meanies anymore. Um, and of course, he wins all the time, and he's just the best guy ever. It just took me out of the novel. It really did, because the normal Chaos Space Marines in that book, even though they're all Chaos Space Marines and they all want to burn down the Imperium, are treated as these animals, right? And I think Maka hit on the whole theme of Space Marines, what they should be last week. Um, his whole modus operandi is, if the Imperium can't survive without being so mean to everybody, then it shouldn't exist. I just couldn't get with it. But that is a very human thing to think, right? But you're missing the point of 40k if you write Space Marines like that, because 40k isn't a setting that you can be nice in. It's literally, you don't have a choice. It'd be very nice if you could be nice, but you don't have a choice, right? Which is why I don't like the Salamander memes. Not for me. And Maka hit it on the head the other week where he said, your Space Marines are animals. These are monsters. These are genetically engineered freaks. You shouldn't look at them like they are heroic. You should look at them and go, "Oh my god, that's terrifying." The phrase "post-human dread" is used in Horus Heresy, and it's one of the best things that they introduced in those books was post-human dread. Just get across how even the good guys, the Lunar Wolves at the time, inspire pants-wetting fear in normal humans because they're massive and they just chew through everything in front of them and they have no emotion about it at all, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm not a fan of making Space Marines more human. I'm not a fan of making them nice guys and relatable. Um, sure, every now and again you can have one that stands out from the pack. Your Sigismunds, your Karna Betrayers, your Argol Tals, no problem. But by and large, Space Marine should be an object of fear and fascination rather than, oh, here's Mike and he is, wearing his Che Guevara t-shirt, and it just doesn't wash with me at all. I don't know how you think, OC.
Well, when I think about it, I think there's a particular saying. I don't know who coined it, where it's from. Maybe I'm making it up, but to fight monsters, we created monsters of our own.
Oh, Pacific
And
Rim. That's what that's from.
there you go. Okay. So I think that's very much what the Imperium and the Space Marines are. And in particular, it's like, here you have, like when I talk about how, like with, if you had female Space Marines, they'd be so gene modified, they would be unrecognizable. There'd be no feminine traits about them whatsoever. Therefore, you know, apart from people who do like weird fetish sculpting or something, where they've all got giant mammaries, It's very much the same thing with their
Oh yeah,
personality.
brother.
All the normal things that would, that make a human's personality up are not going to be there necessarily in 40k, because it's like they don't realistically have family, so they don't have those bonds. They try and make up for it perhaps with their sort of bizarre version of brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have wealth. They don't have possessions beyond their immediate war gear that they cherish. They don't have any longing for the homes that they came from. They don't really have a memory of those because they're taken when they're so young and turned into these monsters in the first place. They've seen uncounted horrors and had their mind repeatedly wiped and toyed with and messed with, and they're having religious dogma rammed down their throat constantly. They're, if you try to imagine as a modern day human what it would be like to be, a priest in Lindisfarne or something when the Vikings first raided it. And it's very much like that. It's just a total other world, that they live in, just extreme violence and dogma. And it's very hard to make a Space Marine that's relatable. And every time they do, like, it takes something away from being a Marine themselves. You could just have it be any generic enhanced superhuman if you're just going to have them run the gamut of all the normal human emotions. What works with, say, the Primarchs is that you have something that's, because they're raised amongst humans and by humans, except for, Mortarion and the Lion, that they've taken on human personalities, but that's because of the climate they grew up in. That makes them the exception because they've spent their whole life around other people, and, like Gilliman, has a mother. Perturabo has a sister and a father, and even if he didn't like him, and we see this among multiple Primarchs, and therefore their personalities are a lot easier to understand and to humanize, because Primarchs, if everything about them is dialed up to 15, so is their personality, right? But with a Space Marine, you do not have that. There is no Space Marine who's, well, apart from a couple of stories, but exceptions don't make the rule. The Space Marines themselves, once they're gene-enhanced, are not just dropped with the infant mind of a 2-year-old into a village and they grow up, working the farm as a gene-enhanced giant Space Marine. It's not how it's done. They're warriors from the get-go, and, everything about them is that way. And so trying to graft a human personality onto them, I think, is very misleading because it's not realistically what would happen. And I find that, and this is not to say that you can't enjoy those stories, but it's more just I find exploring what they are more interesting than trying to just turn them into regular humans.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, that's
you lose what they are. You lose what they are completely.
it speaks a
It's
bit
not
to
gonna
what we
humanize
were talking about last week, right? With the watering down of 40k. If you water down what makes Space Marines unique, well, now you're dealing with a setting that's less 40k than it would otherwise be, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think what we were talking about the other day was again spot on. It is that these aren't in such a violent universe. You need to fight fire with fire, and that is what Space Marines are. And another reason why female Space Marines is a bad idea, right? I'm not opposed to chicks in power armor, right? Especially with big ass titties, right? Get them in there, no problem, right? Let's do that. But the problem is that we're told the reason why Space Marines are so monstrous is because they had to be. Right? The Emperor wanted to create legions of Adeptus Custodes. That's what he wanted. But he couldn't, right? He didn't have the time. He had to get out there and start conquering the galaxy before Chaos started getting a hold on his dudes, because he always knew that was going to happen. It was inevitable, right? In the end, he speaks about it in the end and the death, right? It was always, the Primarchs were always going to turn on each other, and those that survived would have been the ones who stuck around with him to rule the Imperium, which would have been great. And it would have been your Gillimans, your Dawns, your more stable Primarchs would have been the ones hanging about. Others were meant to die, Kurz, Angron, all those. Well, not Angron at the start, but, when he found Angron. Getting back to it, though, the reason why Space Marines are as they are is because they're mass-produced, right? They are mass-produced. These are vat-grown monsters that are created very quickly to get out there and start conquering the galaxy. Custodes are created from scratch, sculpted from absolute baseline human infant to being what they are by the Emperor himself, and if not the Emperor, his best gene rights. And it takes decades to get them to where they are. So they can be female. That's why I don't have much of a problem with female Custodes. I have a problem with its implementation, but the idea of it makes sense, right? Because they are works of art. Each of them is totally unique. Space Marines, mass-produced monsters. That's why they're less human, and that's why both of them are inhuman for different reasons. Custodes are way above humanity, so they have trouble relating to them. They're basically gods, and Space Marines think they're Custodes when really they're just monsters, right? They don't really see, or they shouldn't see much worth in the human species. But that's why, anyway. That's another reason why they shouldn't be given over to being, shall we say, nice guys every now and again. As Maka said, doesn't mean you can't have relatable Space Marines. That's not what we're saying. In fact, you should have relatable Space Marines. It just should always be... I think I used the Hitman analogy the other week, right? The reason why Hitman doesn't work as a TV series or as a movie is because Agent 47 is the main character. You shouldn't be, right? You shouldn't humanize a bald clone assassin. That's not what he's for. He's supposed to be the main antagonist, or a guy, when he turns up, you're like, oh shit, right, it's about to hit the fan, right? That's what you do with Space Marines too. And, I don't know, Maka can talk about it, but I don't know whether the Horus Heresies had a lot to answer for when it comes to humanizing Space Marines that shouldn't be humanized. I don't know.
It's done it a bit, but, the funny thing about the Heresies, it's a different time period. The Astartes are not, the Astartes are older that you have in the chapters, and a lot more, grim and reticent. They know they're in a declining empire, whereas in the Horus Heresy, everyone, it feels like they're on the ascent, until it turns to shit with the Heresy. I think Tau are an interesting thing to go to here, because, bear with me, I promise I have a point here.
Mm-hmm.
The Tau are what humans were before the Dark Age of technology, right? During the Golden Age of mankind.
The rising empire.
Rising empire, extremely good technology, because humans had, at one point, technology that's unfathomable to the people in 40k. That's part of the whole point of the setting, is they've lost so much. Even in 30k, they've lost so much. And part of the whole thing of the Great Crusade was trying to recover some of what they had lost. But the Tower, in that very situation, right, where they're first reaching out into the wider galaxy, and they're realizing, you kind of got to leave your ideals at the door. And the Tower have done some very questionable things, no matter how much people want to play up they're really nice guys, and no, they've sterilized whole planets and stuff. They're not above and beyond, doing exterminatus of their own. They'll just, sterilize civilization and let them die out over, a generation or two, as opposed to the Imperium, who just, does the old blam or the cyclonic torpedo to get the job done. It's just as cruel in its own way. And that was what humanity would have been like. The Tau have stories about, meeting the Orcs and going, what, these guys just can't be reasoned with. Or meeting the Tyranids and going, these guys really can't be reasoned with. If you come across them, exterminate at all costs as violently and efficiently as you can. And, Space Marines are the ultimate endpoint of that, where the Emperor has been there during the Golden Age of humanity, been out in the galaxy, seen what is out there, probably knew about or had visions of or whatever, the Rangdan and abominable intelligences, Men of Stone, Men of Iron, all of that, Necrons, Eldar, you name it, right? When he's creating the Marines, he's creating them knowing that that's the crap that is out there that they're going to have to fight. And then the Marines, by the time you got to 40k, you've had to throw chaos in on this, traitor Space Marines, and all of the horrible rituals and such that they've conducted along the way. All of these things combined paints a very different picture of what the mindset of the Imperium, and especially the Space Marines, would be. I think the closest look that we as humans can probably get to Space Marines is probably if you look at modern day veterans of conflict who have been deployed for so long, they can't wind down when they get home. Just completely on edge, switched on all the time due to numerous traumatic stress disorders that they have. And oddly enough, the only place they feel comfortable and where they actually express themselves is in combat and with their fellow Astartes. Obviously real modern day humans is not fellow Astartes, but in the setting it would be the fellow Astartes. You're not going to catch Space Marines in 40k, sitting down with a poet like Euphrates Keeler or whatever in the Horus books and having a deep and meaningful chat about feelings because he, fought a demon. If you look at, the Grey Knights, for example, they're not sitting down with anyone to go over like, I fought one demon. It was very traumatic. No, that dude was sitting there like Blaine in Predator with the minigun, just purifying all those demons, and to him it was just another day in the job.
You don't rest as a Space Marine, you wait.
Yeah.
That's it, you're a weapon. You're not, these aren't guardsmen, and this is the thing, like, it's, I know what people are trying to do by making them more traumatized. I get that, right? You want to make sure people are seen. You want to make sure that soldiers out there or people who've been through some stuff. Okay, well this guy's suffering too, so it's not too bad for me to suffer. It's fine. That's what the Guard are for. And the Guard are normal humans. Don't take that away from them, right? Don't take the Guard away from the Guard and give it to Space Marines. Flesh out the Imperial Guard. Flesh out your regiments. That's the problem. Like the Space Marines are living weapons. That's cool, right? No, that's great, and you should lean into that, right? They shouldn't be, for all of the human Space Marines, they should be the ones that stand out. Yeah, sure, But I really like the way they did Garviel Loken, right? I like Loken because I think it's Keeler who comes to him in Horus Rising as like the press, you know what I mean? Like a journalist, and he's like, Tarek Torgadon said I should come to you for an interview, and he's like, oh, did he? Okay, like really annoyed, and he comes across like a Space Marine, like he's taking his bolter apart, he's cleaning it, he's meditating over his weapons, and he's annoyed that she's there. He's not unpleasant. He just like, yeah, okay, yeah, And she's like, well, do you feel fear? And he says, no. Oh, you're very brave then. He said, no, I'm not brave. I can't feel fear. I genetically can't feel fear. And he explains what the Space Marines are. That's great, but that's as far as it should really go for most Space Marines. It should just be barely tolerating the humans around them, Does everybody need to be the Marines malevolent? No. I mean, there are certain chapters that go way overboard, But that's 40k in a nutshell. The weakness of writing 40k is that you have a lot of writers who like extremes. You have Space Marines who are saving babies from burning buildings and the salamanders, and you've got Space Marines who are
buildings they lit on fire though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then you've got Space Marines who are leveling a city block on the off chance that there might be a traitor in there. And even that's just a human traitor, or just not a Space Marine. And this is why certain factions like your Black Templars, your Dark Angels are still so beloved, because they hold on to that animalistic nature of, no, sorry, these guys are dead, and that's what we're here to do. You know what I mean? So yeah.
That's it's a whole bunch of interesting points laid out by both of you. I asked the question because it's a topic I find myself returning to every now and again, just all pondering and killing time. But this idea that are Space Marines too human? Are Primarchs too human? Macca's point you outlined earlier around, Primarchs have a bit more acceptability because of the fact that they had parents in the traditional sense. So that does move my position with regards to them a little bit. There's a bit more room there for them to become humanized, I guess. I still don't love it, right? So my bias around this question, or I guess the source that caused me to pose this question to you guys was, I keep finding I mean, I don't want to say it's like a ever-present problem, but it just sticks out to me because I don't like it. Just Space Marines making decisions that I couldn't fathom making myself, based out of some reactive emotion, right? Or just behaving in a way where it's like, why are you so unbecoming of what you ought to be, right? And yes, Space Marines, like, it's largely a bad thing. They aren't human, right? But the point I'm trying to get to here is that Space Marines, because they don't have the human, that emotional kind of core, let's say, I would prefer my Space Marines to be a sort of very rational being that knows how to execute in a crisis, right? They wouldn't be hindered by the human emotions, like, clogging up their decision making in that sense, right? But there is a lot of this in that 40k book, The Wolf Time, with a whole bunch of Space Wolves characters just getting bogged down by their need to validate their culture, right? And I was just like, oh, this is just destroying my ability to root for you, for one. And then also, like, I guess the setting isn't that bad if you can just, like, bitch and moan, basically, as a particular Space Wolves chapter master about your culture and its importance. I guess the galaxy isn't really at stake. I guess the Space Wolves really aren't on the brink, as you guys tried to make the story out to be, right? Because surely a human, right? A human might come to the logical conclusion that, oh, maybe we should take certain actions in the story, in that story anyways, to prevent this, but they don't. And it's like, I don't know, it wrinkles my brain a little bit, right? And in the Horus Heresy, like, there are particular moments, I think, where Primarchs, I get kind of annoyed in that same way about certain Primarchs making choices, but the humanized aspect of them, because they've been raised with families, with parents, with bonds, right? I guess that gives me a little leeway with regards to my position towards them. I don't know if you guys played Space Marine 2's campaign, but I
finished it.
I think Sergeant Gadriel has a bit of this. He has a bit of pettiness that I feel like is so unbecoming. Yeah. Like, it feels so, like,
it does feel weird.
Preteen girl. Like, it feels.
It does feel weird when you're playing it. Yeah, it does.
And I get it. They want to have, like, a story arc. They want to have a bit of friction in the party. But I feel like those sort of petty, immature emotions that keep you oriented to your task would be bred out of you from all the things I guess, like Mecca kind of outlined earlier, with, like, how they're raised, the dogmatic, cultural kind of routines that they live and breathe.
I think it's a symptom of using Space Marines at all. I think that's the question we need to ask. Are you, Horus Heresy aside, but even Horus Heresy novels, actually, you don't need 70-odd novels, right? So, Horus Heresy aside, do we need to be using Space Marines in stories at all? There was a big argument to suggest that the Horus Heresy shouldn't have been told. Or if it was, it should have been 2 or 3 novels written in the same style as the Master of Mankind, where you see what's going on, but a lot of it's kept behind the scenes for a few big cool moments, right? Do something like that. Should it be told at all? Because then you're humanizing and you're demystifying one of the main aspects of the coolness of 40k. If you make the Space Marines act like a bunch of school children, like you do in Space Marine 2 with Gadriel and the way that they speak to each other, I've spoken to friends like that in school, back and forth, when I was like 12. You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of a level. I don't know if you've played it, Maka, but your eyes will roll when you play this game. Brilliant game, by the way. Not saying it's
very
not a
fun
good game.
Very fun.
Really good. And the way it depicts the Space Marines going to war, again, really good. But the Space Marines fall down when you start to humanize them, because you You can't tell me one thing and then show me another. You tell me the Space Marines are all these inhuman, weaponized dudes who are just like, you know, so above everybody else, and then they're acting like school kids. Like my brain sort of shuts down. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't what you're showing me. You're showing me this petulant child who is 8 foot tall and has a lot of muscles. You know, do you demystify the Space Marines by making them more human? And I think the main question we need to ask is, I think we've sort of said, yeah, you shouldn't humanize them, but I think the other question is, should we be telling stories about them at all? Because you can't really without humanizing them, or you'd be telling a really bad story.
That's an interesting. Oh, go ahead.
If you're gonna do it about Chaos Space Marines, because you've got people there who aren't repressed in the same way, and who have decided to go out and actually, you know, explore themselves. You know, they're very selfish Chaos Space Marines. They don't have the same, you know, dogmatic approach that the Loyalist Astartes do. So with them, and of course all the different colors and spectrums and whatever that they have there, you know, whether Nurgle, Zinch, Chaos Undecided, you name it, that's something you can play with, because they're going to have very different personalities thanks to their experiences, right?
Yeah.
The Loyalists, though, I mean, you can do it with the Loyalists, but it's so interesting that if the Space Marines in the story are almost emotionless slates, kind of what the Custodes are portrayed as during the Horus Heresy. If you think like,
oh yeah, that's so funny. Now that you mention it.
Yeah, where like the Marines like, oh, these Custodes are so uncaring about the regular, you know, Imperial peasant folk. So yes, you're a Marine. You would be uncaring about the regular peasant folk, you know? Granted, it's Dominion Zephon. He's got a heart of gold because the Blood Angel, you know, directly lived with Sanguinius and all that kind of thing. You know, they've got a different personality. But that is, again, the Horus Heresy. 10,000 years of just endlessly losing ground, and basically, you know, that there is no successful Great Crusade, you know, unified goal at the end of the day like the Astartes legions had. All you know is that your name is probably going to get added to the tally that has been going for over 10,000 years of dead Marines. That is the most likely fate that awaits you. There is no golden age coming. There is no reclaiming anything. You are just literally manning the pumps to stop the ship from sinking as quickly. It's, you know, there is no hope. You know, and explore that as an idea. Like, explore the despair of it all. That is definitely something you can do with Astartes if you're going to explore personality. But you can't, you know, tread over the ground of the Astartes going, you know, I wish I'd been an artist. It doesn't work as well.
No.
You know?
I want
and again, there are quirks of legions. There are quirks of legions that may still exist to some degree in the chapters of 40k, right? Where the Astartes do still practice some art in their spare time. The White Scars do still do some calligraphy, okay? But those are exceptions and quirks of like tradition as opposed to personality traits. And I think it's really important to draw a distinction between them. Like the Space Wolves, when the Primaris Space Wolves meet the Space Wolves for the first time, what do you think the attitudes were like? You know, because they weren't raised amongst that culture. It would be like when the Terran legions and the legions raised on the homeworlds of the Primarchs met for the first time. You know, when the two disparate halves, and, you know, you have the White Scars of Chagoris, for example, meeting with the White Scars who've worked with the Sons of Horus for decades. And then they've got to try and work together as a unified whole, and they have completely different tactics and styles. It would be the same thing with their personalities, their belief system. And at least when that is explored in novels like Scars, you know, they literally don't get it. The Terran Legionnaires are like, what, laugh at death? What even does that mean? Like, they don't get it. So it's like, you can do it, but again, time dependent where you set your story, who is the crux of your story around, you know? And I don't think it works as well for 40k. All it ends up becoming to me, at the end of the day, 40k novels, and why I don't read a lot of them anymore, is they're bolter porn.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst
You
of
know?
them. The worst of them are certainly the ones that are more marine focused. Um, some excellent
Yes.
points there. The point of Trader Legions being the ones to explore the too human aspect that we're kind of discussing here is one I wholly agree with. I mean, Chaos Space Marines are, in essence, like you're looking at the fallen angel kind of archetype. Like that's where you can explore like where following your emotions can lead you, right? I think that can be very compelling from like a trader Astartes point of view. But to North's point from earlier, like should you even have Space Marine stories? I think there are exceptions, and there are going to be certain writers more apt to do it to kind of ride this knife edge that we're talking about here better than others, right? I think, we don't have to get into like naming authors or whatever, but I think we've all been exposed to authors that can do the Marines more tastefully than others, where it doesn't just devolve into bolter porn. But I think the safest way to go is to just not have our Space Marines be the point of view character, right? You spoke about the Death Watch Marine with Eisenhorn last week, North. There's a small band of Space Marines in the Sea of Souls. It's one of the newer 40k novels, but one that I think is quite good. That's, from the point of view of the Imperial human on the Navy cruiser, right? And then events take place in the story, and among the cast and crew is a small group of Astartes from a different ship, right? And they are that much more glorious from seeing them through the point of view of the human characters. That seems to be the safest way. And then look, like the particular sergeant of that squad has a cool arc. Arc as a series of events. His character doesn't change. It's not like he has an epiphany and and sees some long-term goal realized, right? He's doing his dour duty. But you get to kind of keep track of his adventure throughout the story as everything goes haywire on the ship, and it's still, like, I found it to be more compelling, right? Like,
I just don't think 40k is conducive to having human Space Marines. I just don't the Horus Heresy is a different beast. The Horus Heresy, you are experiencing the downfall of a golden age, and as Maka said, legions are a lot more intertwined with their homeworld. In 40k, like, shit's hitting the fan, dude. Like, we don't have time. Like, we don't have time to be all little write poetry and sing Kumbaya. Like, it's not like Space Marines should be in. I'm not saying, at least, and I don't think you guys are either, that they shouldn't be involved in stories. No, Space Marines are cool as fuck, man. It's great, right? We love Space Marines. But should they, at least in 40k, should there be an entire novel series based around Space Marine characters? I would argue no. Like, no, they shouldn't. Like, video games at most, because it's a power fantasy. But everything else, no. Like they should be there. They should be talking to the characters in the novels. The reason why the Backwin novels and the Eisenhorn novels are so loved is because when Space Marines turn up, you're like, oh shit. Oh, on either side. Like, okay, it's hitting the fan. Let's go. This is going to be awesome. And it always is awesome, right? When a human sees a Space Marine fighting another Space Marine, their brain breaks. Like, how is that moving that quickly? That's terrifying. That's that gives me Marine feels, right? Seeing, a Space Marine sit down and talk about, how his mother never treated him well as a kid. That's what? No. Like, why we shouldn't be there. Like, 40k, we have better things to do as Space Marines in 40k. I'm sorry. Like, a whole galaxy's going to shit. Like, the whole reason, it's right there in your statements at the start of every rulebook. There is no time for love. There is no time for forgiveness. There's only war. That's it, right? And in a series where there is only war, the true tragedy of the Space Marines and the Horus Heresy is seeing how animalistic and machine-like the Space Marines should be in 40k. How interesting would it have been for the Lion and Gilliman to come back and go, wow, you guys suck. Right? You guys You guys used to be good people in Horus Heresy, right? Before then, I don't know what's happened to you over time, but you're no sons of mine, right? That would be interesting. Having them come back and Calgar go, hello, Primarch, hello, Gilliman, sorry, Calgar. Let's all be Ultramarines together. Brilliant. It doesn't sit with me. It just, having human Space Marines takes your mission statement at the start of your rulebook and throws it out the fucking window. It just goes, nah, well, not everything's war. Kagan over there likes to paint pictures on walls. So, stop that. You're supposed to be a Space Marine. Just be a space. Go over there, and give more time to characters like Beckwin, like Eisenhorn, like Ravenor, Gideon Ravenor. Make more characters like that we can experience 40k through. As Maka said before, nearly every Space Marine novel I come across, when I read Space Marine novels to fall asleep? Fall asleep. I did it last night. I put on not Size of the Emperor, the Emperor's Spears, ADP. Put that on. He's a really good author. Still bolter porn. That's all it was. It was just some Space Marines wandering around, boxing lyrical about how cool their bolters are, and I don't think they should be front and center. I just don't.
They lose their mystique, right? Horus Heresy, kind of. It's so Marine centric, right? Like you're kind of there for that. You're there for the Primarchs, and I guess by extension their legions, right? So I guess you're kind of forced to focus in on them. In 40k, there's lots of room, lots of human characters that you could develop and focus in on. I guess you think there's a bit of incentive on GW's part to just focus in on Marines, as they do with their product lines, right? Just bloated in comparison to other factions, right? I guess it's in line, but not ideal.
I imagine we mentioned the Primarch's return. I imagine like Lion, if you remember the original Conan the Barbarian with Schwarzenegger, after he's killed, spoilers for 1982's Conan the Barbarian, after he's killed Thulsa Doom, and he's just sitting there pondering the riddle of steel, just sitting there at the base of the stairs. I just imagine that was the Lion for an awfully long period of time after coming back. Because that's what would make the most sense. Just sitting there looking at the Imperium and just sort of, the very first word that he says is just, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is what I wake up to find myself in. There's a bit of that.
Yeah, and they tried a little bit of that with Gilliman, yeah. But it's not the same. Well, in Gilliman's case, he just like walks into a stratagem room, turns on the television, and it's like again pop culture reference. Fifth Element, when Mila Jovovich's character is, she's going through the dictionary, learning like all of like the history over the last couple thousand years she's been asleep, or 5,000 years. It's like the same thing. He's just going through, and he just comes out like a day later. He's like, well, that's pretty shit. Anyway, moving on with things. It doesn't, it's not given the gravitas that it feels like that situation really needs, that culture shock that it would have been for the Primarchs, who do have personalities. It's like, I died for this.
Yeah, just for a good beat. Like at the same time, like I said, my bias towards this question is I kind of prefer even my Primarchs not to be bogged down by emotion, so much so that it affects their decision making. But I'm not against Primarchs especially, and Marines feeling at large. Like, of course, you're allowed to feel and express emotions. It's just when it skews your decision making into idiocy is where I'm like, okay, like look, if Gilliman is a task-oriented logistician, I'm okay with him being hyper-pragmatic, and that's to a degree why I sort of grew to like Gilliman more than I expected to over the Horus Heresy. Well, I haven't read as much of the Horus Heresy as either of you guys. It seems. That's just, I think, That's my understanding of it. But even still, I was like, wow, look at this Ultramarines Primarch, the one that was set up for me to not like, that the internet memes all over and hates on the Ultramarines, right? He gets to act rationally. And I feel like that attribute is like, I look so fondly at that attribute with regards to like many other Primarchs. And I'm like, oh, if only Vulcan could be a rational decision maker in his stories with agency, right? I look so fondly. And you know, to Space Marines at large, where it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's just, maybe I'm a robot. I don't know, but I feel like
there's so much scope there. You know, there's so much you can do with, you know, just the exploration of a character. I think some of the movies that have like hit us the most, or stories that have hit us the most, are the ones where they've, you know, deconstructed a character, or they've turned into something that's a much more serious affair. You know, if you look at, it's going to sound crazy, X-Men Origins Wolverine, and then you go and watch Logan, right? Talk about polar opposites. You know, yes, there's a ton of bolter porn out there as it exists, but would it kill them to actually sit down and do like an actually philosophical, thought-provoking, you know, novel from a Primarch's perspective, like the Lionel Gilliman, in, you know, that wasn't just a tie-in cash grab novel dropped alongside some box set, where, you know, it treats itself as a serious storytelling medium. I know the company, you know, treats the fluff as this thing that they can just abuse to sell miniatures, and they don't care for canon. But I care for canon. That's the stakes that make me invested in the hobby. If there are no stakes, why should I be invested? Sort of my belief. But
I feel that's, you know, what most people kind of align with. I don't think you're alone in that at all.
It feels like it on the internet some days, my friend. You're only allowed 8 negative thoughts this month, Macca. That's 9. I'm fucking unsubscribing. But you know, wouldn't it be interesting to like see like how they come to terms with it, with what the Imperium is, and go like, is there a way that I can see forward through this? Like, how am I gonna unfuck this mess? You know, what can I do about it? That would be a great, for me personally, right? I'm not saying it would be everyone's cup of tea, but it's far more interesting, the 100th story of, and the Space Marine Sergeant was so awesome, you know, he shot 2 advancing Howling Banshees through the head with his bolt pistol, then he threw it aside and killed the next one with his power sword, because he's just so good at being amazing. You know, it's just how half the novels read. And that's boring.
Oh, you're
like,
not
cool.
wrong.
He's a superhuman who always wins. I get it. Like, give me some stakes here.
And I think you're hitting the crux of it there, Macca, because it really feels, and it could, look, guys, it could be that we're just enlightened individuals, okay? But even if we're not, okay, even if we're not, I don't know about you guys, but for myself, I am way more engaged in any of the Horus Heresy novels when there's a scene of a Primarch just talking with another Primarch, or with anyone actually, because they have so much narrative weight. I think the writers are forced to make everything they say significant, or maybe it's a bit of cause and effect. It might loop in on itself.
Well,
there.
I've got a similar take, but I love it when Valdor's talking to Primarchs, because Valdor isn't a Primarch, but he's on their level. So he's not affected by the aura at all, because even the other Primarchs are affected by the auras of other Primarchs, right?
Oh, yeah, they mentioned
Whereas
that.
Valdor
True.
just isn't. Valdor's just like, you guys are all pussies. You know, like, and he will say that to them. And both Dawn and Sanguinius are like wanting approval from Valdor throughout the Siege of Terror. You know, and it's just so funny, like watching them just like, well, am I good now? Like, no, you're a pussy, get out of here. You know, you fly away, you know. And when he finally gives them at the end, and then when they're going up to Horus's ship and he gives them the barest of nods, like, all right, yeah, you guys are badass, okay, you know. That was really human, but in a good way, because as you just said, they're operating on the same level, right? Maybe if you have Space Marines interacting with other Space Marines, it wouldn't hurt to just make that a bit more human because they are understanding each other. But even then, 40k Space Marines for me should be a product of their time, and in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. The Horus Heresy should be interesting because you're seeing Space Marines in an age where it is not only war. You have remembrances. You have cultural ambassadors of the Imperium going to different worlds. You have Xenos alliances, by God, right? Yeah, you have the Emperor's not wiping out the Eldar. He's actually in contact with Eldrad at certain points, things like that. So it is another time in the Horus Heresy, and you should see 40k bleeding in towards the end of it, sure. But 40k is so different to the Horus Heresy, and I think this is we're going into the gameplay of what Horus Heresy 3.0 might look like, and I know Macca's terrified of this and might even walk away entirely if they make, and it looks like they make 30k more like 40k. Well, that's not what it's for, right? 30k, I want weird armor. I want weird looking marine armies that don't quite look like the modern ones, right? I don't want Primaris looking marines. I want a golden age. This is a more innocent age, a more innocent time. This is a time when Space Marine armor should be made to combat everybody but Space Marines, because nobody expects them to fight each other. It should be that kind of an age where you have, again, your cultural legions, like your White Scars, your Space Wolves. Yeah, okay, they can be more human in the Horus Heresy. I think that's a great idea. You make it different by making the Marines relatable, because they're the main characters. And at this stage, it is not only war. There are other things going on. And the Emperor's planning ahead, and he even the Emperor tells us, in the end, the Space Marines have to adapt to a peacetime strategy, because there will come a time when they're not fighting anymore, or they're fighting to maintain what they have every now and again, when a War of the Beast pops up, if the Horus Heresy didn't happen, the War of the Beast would still happen, right?
Right.
The Orcs would still be there. So, there would be wars to fight, but most of the time, it'd be sort of one of those, the Roman guy, the farmer, you know what I mean? He puts down his hoe, not a woman, I mean, the hoeing implement. Mm-hmm. He puts that down, he goes to fight a war, and then he comes back and starts farming again. That's what he's supposed to do. That's what the Space Marines were supposed to do after the Horus Heresy. Certain legions would have been gone, and I think the Emperor, and again, he tells us, always knew that there would be a civil war. But he thought there would be a civil war because, the more fighty Space Marines don't want to have peace, right? Your World Eaters, your Night Lords, right? There would come a civil war where all the bad uns would face all the good uns, and that would happen. He didn't think Horus would fall to chaos or shit like that. So, again, more human Space Marines in Horus Heresy, good. No problem with that at all. It's a different age. But you're missing the fucking point if you put really, really, shall we say, relatable Space Marines in 40k. We don't have time. We just don't. And even when they do it with the, it's going to drive me mad. What's his second name? Solomon Alpha Legion. Legion. 1 second.
His name is Solomon Alfarius.
Solomon Akora. That was his name. Solomon Akora. Right. When you have characters like this, that are written to be relatable, nice guys, it just rubs the reader up the wrong way. It just really does. He's a chaos sorcerer who doesn't rely on chaos and doesn't trust it. And you have these characters who are so hell bent on being relatable and cool that you miss the point. Utterly miss the point of what a Chaos Space Marine is supposed to be.
Do you suppose? Sorry, a bit of a tangent here. Do you suppose that particular instance with that character, an Alpha Legion sorcerer, Chaos sorcerer that doesn't like chaos or whatever, do you think that's born out of the Alpha Legion kind of meme culture around them? Like they're not really loyal, or are they? Or are they good guys, or are they bad guys?
No, it reads like Mike Brooks jerking off one of his characters to be the most awesome thing ever, you know, and it came across both. Yeah, every Black Library writer who's done this has fallen into this trap, even ADB with Eskandar Kayon, right, in the Black Legion books. Every single time they do this, that they turn into these Mary Sues, who have every toy and none of the drawbacks. You know, what does Kayon have? He dreams of wolves sometimes, right? Cool. That's it. Awesome, brilliant. Okay, so you're making these characters not relatable by, again, not that I'm saying they should be relatable, but if you're going to make them relatable, stop giving them all the toys. I've always said, 101, when you start writing something, the drawbacks of someone or the limitations of someone are far more interesting than their strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
far
they're
more
challenges, right? That you have to contend with those lacks.
In magic systems, in anything that you're doing, why can't you just use it to solve all problems in the galaxy? Why can't you, you know? Are there reasons why you can't do that, you know? And I think if you make Space Marines, bring it back down to the overall point, if you make Space Marines more human in 40k, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're having your cake and eating it. I'm sorry, that's not how the world works. These guys should be traumatized, and even if they're not, they shouldn't realize that they are, right? If all they know is war, everybody should look like some flavor of Carcharodon, right? That's how the Marines in 40k should be. Some flavor of Space Shark.
Yeah, I don't hate that. It's part of why I kind of like the Iron Hands more than I probably ought to, because I don't really collect them or anything, or even have read many of their books. But I just love that they get to be transhuman super soldiers, right? They are so cold and logical, and it speaks to my biases regarding this issue, right? I'm just like, it's so fucking rad, right? That it is so cold to a fault, right? That they'll like the 40k meme, they'll walk through a guardsman to fight the heretic, right?
Right, it's like the Emperor as a text-to-speech device has a really cool quote that I always like to think when I'm discussing these things, and that is when the Emperor wakes up and he says, "Really, what have you all become?" That's how the Primarch should see every Space Marine. If Ferrus Manus came back and saw the Iron Hands, he'd be horrified about what they are.
Oh, especially in his case. They're totally against like his ideals, right?
The reason why the Iron Hands is so cool is because they are that. Mm-hmm. That's why they're cool. It's because they've evolved naturally from being, 30k, and then they're traumatized. Yeah, they go 10,000 years, and then this is where they are now. And
this might be a spicy hot take, but I much prefer the cultural fallout of losing the Primarch in the case of the Iron Hands over the Blood Angels. I feel, I don't know about you guys, that the Blood Angels are so good. They're so noble. They're so idealistic. And when it comes to like the Blood Angels actually are so traumatized because of the Black Rage and the Psychic Curse, man. When it comes to
it's the Mary, it's the exact Mary Sue. Like, it's every trope down to the T of like, everyone instantly likes them. The people who are against them are clearly in the wrong no matter what. The Mary Sue / Gary Stew. That's exactly what the Blood Angels are. It's like all their flaws are actually secretly a win. Which is that's why they're insufferable.
They're foiled so well by the Iron Hands in that regard. It's like both lost their Primarch earlier than they should have, right? So tragic. And then you look at how it's affected the Legion's culture, and you're like, which one's more 40k, right?
Like less Blood Angels, less Space Wolves, more Iron Hands, please. That's if you want my opinion on 40k Space Marines, that's where we should be. That's it. They've already done it. The reason why, and by the way, when was the last time you read an Iron Hands novel? Yeah, they don't want to touch them because that's why. Because they are 40k. Mm. They are traumatized, dark, not hating of humans, but really, really not into humans, like, at all. You know, that just, what a waste of fucking time.
Yeah, they're
Get out of my way, flesh puppet.
they're
You know,
they're
you are
seeking
literally
to leave their humanity even beyond what an Astartes is to begin with, right? So
coping mechanism. I love it. They are traumatized. They've lost their Primarch, man. Like, and it makes them more interesting, and it makes you want to root for them all the time, dude. Like, you want them to win. Lamentas, you know, they're a meme, but you want them to win. You know, Celestial Lions, again, you want them to win. Like, you should move them away. Like, every single Legion from back in the day should look like this. Like, the Blood Angels for me would be the coolest army in the setting if they went back to the Revenant Legion after Sanguinius died. Right? They got a more iron colour. There's blood in there, but it's more iron. They're actual cannibals now. Right? They're not vampires in space. They learn by eating the flesh of their foes. They ritualistically cannibalize even humans that they fight to learn more techniques and to learn their plans. You know?
That's actually closer to what they were prior to Sanguinius coming along.
Exactly.
You know, it's regressing to the Legion pre. No, it's ignoring the character.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just say ignoring the character design tropes of the Blood Angels. It's much more interesting to explore. You know, because it's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And it's always the same chapters / legions that get the novels because they're really popular. It's very rare that you see novels for chapters outside of, you know, Ultramarines, Blood Angels, Space Wolves. That's your main ones, right? When you do get other chapters, you know, those are very much the exception. And usually it's because the author, you know, like an ADB, got a little bit of sway going on, so he's able to get, you know, a Night Lords, you know, series done, or a Black Legion series, you know. They're very much the exception. Like, think how long it was in the whole history of Warhammer, how long they've been making novels and books before we actually got, you know, the Ahriman trilogy, who's one of the most interesting characters in all of Warhammer. Fantasy, 40k, you name it, right? Ahriman's a fantastic character. And it was probably around 2015, something like that, when the Ahriman novel dropped. You know, the character's been around for 30 years. He's twice the age of the average player playing this game. And it took that long. You have an interesting character, but they go, 1,000 Suns, they're popular, you know, for Chaos Legions, I guess, but, you know, they don't sell like Ultramarines do. And then, of course, it's this reinforcing of, well, you know, Ultramarines novels sell, therefore, looks like we're doing another Uriel Ventress book. You know, strap in, boys. And it's just very tiresome. You know, and I would like to see more novels that take place from the perspective of normal humans, where they actually, you know, bite back at the legions. It does, or the chapters. It does happen from time to time, but, you know, think the Theoden speech to Aragorn, you know, where was Gondor when the Westfold fell?
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
That type of thing, like, you know, Marines basically coming into, we're here to save the day, and just basically getting a dressing down, like, and where the fuck were you?
Yeah, you can imagine,
you know?
like a grizzled sort of Imperial Guards
yeah, my men have been fighting and dying.
Captain or something.
You know,
yeah,
oh, well,
exactly.
you know, and then when they get the token, well, you know, they'll be sleeping with the Emperor tonight. They're like, great, that's no consolation to their family.
Yeah, you need
you know,
and it
like,
goes
actually,
over the Astartes' head completely. They're like, okay, well, what?
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to make it as depressing as real conflict, but, you know, don't just... You know, it was one of the great things that Tolkien did, was whenever he has conflict in his books, it's not just glorious victory, there is always pain in the defeat. And he makes a big deal about, you know, healing is a big part of Tolkien's works. You know, the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. You know, these are strong themes in his books. That was a man who lived through the First World War. And it's like, yes, war can be heroic. You can be fighting for ideals and things greater than yourself. But what is the price in doing so? You know, you don't just get to go off and have this grand adventure and everything's well, because it wasn't well for him. All of his good friends died, apart from C.S. Lewis. You know, what kind of an effect does that have on a person? And yet our authors, you know, how many of them have done, you know, I don't want to demean anyone here, but none of them have done actual military service, most of that I can think of. You know, and it shows in the writing because there's no bloody tactics or strategy to anything, but ignoring that part of things, you know, it's very hard to write about a subject that you don't know much about. It would be like me, you know, the Bill Burr joke, if I wrote a book on the third trimester and what to expect.
Fair. That is a very fair point. Funny.
So, it'd be good to see some of that, you know, like actually, you know, have authors who treat it as a serious work. Like, don't think I'm writing a fantasy novel. You know, I'm writing a science fiction novel. It's just dumb and space wizards. How about you actually, you know, sit down and think, how can I make this a something serious that, you know, people can actually read, you know, allegory into, for example. You know, I know veteran community especially loves reading 30k novels and in particular, but, you know, Warhammer novels. If the closer you can speak to that community, you know, it's actually a healthy coping mechanism for many. Personal take there. You know, treat it seriously. Don't treat it as a dumb kid's game that, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if it gets CS GOTO'd and, you know, the Eldar are driving around in Space Marine tanks because they think they're better, you know, where you just shit all over everything, right? It doesn't have to be like that.
I mean, I think also, like, before we go any further, Maka knows how YouTube goes, and, you know, we're not saying you need to be in the military to write 40k novels. You know, turn your brains on, please.
Yeah, it's not black and white. You know, there are shades of grey to opinions.
Like, and it's just the human Space Marines is antithetical to everything we're told 40k is. That's the problem. That's the main problem, you know?
Yeah, it becomes a contradiction, right?
Of course. And there are some things that shouldn't be explained. And I think this is why, when we're looking at, you know, the Horus Heresy, you know, should that have even been a thing? Should we have 70 odd books detailing every part of the Horus Heresy that could be detailed? I would say no. There are huge swathes of the Horus Heresy that should never be told. It should be in the background of a thing that, that's cool.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like an anime with too much filler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean, do you need a Nemesis book about assassins that don't assassinate Horus?
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
You know, do we need that book? And Maka will have dozens on top of his head that you don't need to read in Horus Heresy. You know, I honestly think that we should be exploring the Space Marines in the Horus Heresy. Sure, fair enough, you know, and they should be more human, but there are certain stories that we don't need told. And, you know, I really want to get onto Primarchs, because I know we've discussed Space Marines being more human, but Primarchs and one of my main bugbears with 40k right now is the sheer non-entity of the conflict the Primarchs bring actually is, right? Lionel Johnson doesn't do anything, so let's not even go there. But
he's also maybe that makes him like the best exemplar of the problem. Because I think I know.
Maybe, yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off though.
No, please. You give me something else to talk about. But, like, you know, the Lion Son of the Forest is literally the lion walking around and going, "Oh, this is a forest. This is cool." And then he goes, "Oh, this is another world. This is cool. Oh, there's a Fallen there." Fallen says, "Oh, I'm not a Fallen, and I always liked you." And he goes, "Do you really? Yeah. All right, then you can come with me. Let's take back this world, shall we?" 2 weeks later, he's taking back the world from the Chaos Space Marines. Brilliant. And then we go on from them, and he finds more and more and more Fallen, and it just, okay, all of this lore you put into perspective. I know the Lion is now more of a, I get him now, right? I get him as a dude, but do I need to? Should I get the Lion as a person? Really? Should I get Gilliman as a person? I would argue no. These are unknowable beings that are created in a vat tube by the Emperor, you know? These are things that even the custodians look at them as fucking abominations. Like, you are disgusting to them, right? Like, this is not... I just... No, I don't think the Primarch novels need to happen in 40k. That's going to be hugely controversial. But I don't need to see what kind of slippers Gilliman has on today. Like, I don't care. Like, just... And where is the conflict? I'm fully aware that the High Lords of Terror sort of did like a conspiracy against him. That went nowhere. That went nowhere. A returning Primarch in 40k should burn the fucking galaxy down. The whole thing should go, what? A what's come back? Right. Nail that motherfucker to a cross. That's what we're doing right now. Like, the Ecclesiarchy should be like, where's Ultramar? Right. That guy on a cross right now. Right? That should be the entire... There should be a war to end all wars on the mere suggestion that a Primarch could be returning.
You can do fun things with it. Like, imagine, again, the Primarchs that returned, the very second one that returned should have been Corax, but he won't sell as well as the Lion. Fucking tosses. But, just, again, you're taking a universe that you can treat seriously, and you're dumbing it down because of some numbers on a spreadsheet. It grinds my gears. But, you know, Corax is the perfect foil, because you bring someone in who has experimented with creating fundamentally something like Primaris Marines, and it went absolutely pear-shaped in the worst possible way for him. It would be a fantastic foil to have Corax on one side of the rift, Gilliman on the other, with two completely opposed ideologies. You know, think, it could be Eastern Orthodoxy versus Western Catholicism, Eastern Roman Empire and Byzantines versus Frankish and Charlemagne and Holy Roman Empire. You know, a completely different battle of ideologies where, you know, you have someone who's basically saying, Gilliman, everything you're doing, I think is wrong. And it's a great way to consolidate, you know, how players feel about Primaris, because not everyone does like Primaris. I think many people have just grimly accepted Primaris at this point. But, you know, in Corax, you have a fantastic foil to Gilliman on a personality level. You don't get that with the Lion, especially not this older, more boring version of the Lion that nothing about it makes sense. And again, it's just stories that are written to fill out a spreadsheet, which are the most sad and pathetic. It's like, oh, we're bringing back a Primarch. Make sure we have the obligatory 200-page tie-in novel ready.
Yeah.
The Lion's case certainly felt that way. I mean, what you're describing with Corax does sound interesting, but he would effectively, like, to have that story, you have to change a few things, but, like, you'd have to have him come back basically around the same time Gilliman does, right? And it's just... Fuck. They've made their bed at this point, right?
It takes time for the Primaris Marines to get out there. So if you have Corax on the other side of the Great Rift, just trying to organize the chaos of, you know, like all the chapters and planets that are in disarray because of what's happened, then the Primaris show up one day. That's where you create that, you know, that ideological gulf.
Yeah, then
right?
It sets him up to be hit by that a bit harder, because then he's like, holy crap, this is already spread all over the galaxy at this point. And he has
like these chapters are already en route, and these troops are being doled out to everyone already as we speak. We've already done it, and, you know, the western half of the galaxy, we're now onto the east. Mm-hmm. And he'd be like, no, this goes against everything I stand for. And then, you know, as different Primarchs come back, a sort of coalition of the unwilling could be formed, where you have, you know, Gilliman on one side, Corax on the other, and then almost a coalition, a split between the Primarchs going to the varying sides and picking sides. There's some real great dynamics you can do there, and it allows you to set up things like having, you know, Marines versus Marines on the tabletop, because you can say that, you know, it's a scuffle between Marines of different ideologies.
Yeah,
there are many ways you can play it out where you can do something fun with the story. And again, it's different to just the human politics of it all.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, like, to North's point, like, yeah, obviously, Primarchs, unfortunately, if Primarchs return to 40, or as they are returning to 40k, they will undoubtedly just steal the spotlight. They're just too integral, like, you know, they shine too brightly, right? In that sense, they are going to get novels. And unfortunately, in the case of the lion, it's like, why even have someone come back who's not integrated in affecting the setting in a major way? Because it's kind of contradictory to what you would expect a Primarch to do. Like how you were saying, North. Like, you expect a Primarch to come in and affect the setting, right? This was before. This is after, right?
I think that the main drawback is the lion. I think he is the atypical. Looking at what Games Workshop are getting wrong is you have the lion coming back, and I'm with OC there. I don't think the lion should have been the next one to come back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Korax would have been a good shout, but even if you do make the decision to bring him back, having him come back and do nothing is bloody criminal.
Oh, it's a waste. Yeah, huge.
That's criminal. And you know, the most human thing you can do is come back and again do nothing. Like exactly what he's doing now. You can't have him be too interesting, because I'm not sure the Primarch should come back at all.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to be completely honest.
That's a different discussion. I mean,
topic for another time.
I'm kind of
like,
open to that idea though. But...
like I think, but I'm going to link it back into what we're saying. If you're not bothered about making the Primarchs relatable and making Space Marines too human, if you're going down that route, then bring all the Primarchs back, no problem, right? There's more characters for you to play with.
Well,
but if you care about DNA of 40k, they can't come back. They just can't.
Yeah, because it's.
Well, hang on. I'm going to throw a spanner in the works of the conversation there. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you like to come back next, and why?
Loyalist? We're talking loyalist side? Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Loyalist, chaos. Maybe we can use that as a discussion point another time, but loyalist side.
You already said Korak, so I can't say that.
That's right. That one's taken and gone.
Though. That's not fair.
I've got other Primarchs I would bring back though. I mean, there's the cynical answer of who they bring back. Actually, I'm gonna make it even harder for you. First, I want your cynical answer, and then I want your thematically appropriate answer.
Cynical answer, Sanguinius.
Oh no, you think?
Oh, that is too cynical even for me.
I was gonna go cynical.
Cynical,
like
Russ I know they'll do it.
Choice,
they'll do it. Like if they have their focus group come back and say they'll make this amount of money, that Hawk boy will be back before you can say, fucking cash this check.
He'll be back
faster than Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible. That pains me. It's so counter to what we were discussing about having suffered and being transformed by, like, what two legions are defined by the loss of their Primarch. It's Iron Hands, which are done better, and Blood Angels, right? And to not even, like, I kind of hate on the Sanguinor because it encroaches on that theme, right? Because it's like, oh, you're having your cake and eating it too in a little bit with the Sanguinor guy who mysteriously appears and has the visage, right? But to go whole hog and bring Sanguinius back, it's like, oh my god, it's such rage bait.
If the money's there, man, they'll make the money. I
could imagine it. That's why I bemoan.
Non-cynical, probably Dawn, maybe. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'll go with Dawn. Like, we don't know he's dead. I guess that makes sense. No, Lehman Russ. Oh my god, yeah. They would suck that guy off. They love Space Wolves.
Lehman Russ is like pretty positive. He'll be the next thing we see. The next
Lehman Russ.
Right, well, will Russ come back as a Wolfman or as Russ? And will Rogal Dawn come back with his hands intact?
No, I think Russ will come back as both. I think they'll give him a flaw and then make it too cool that it's not really a flaw
It'll
anymore.
really be a strength, though. Let's be real.
I can become a werewolf whenever I want. Of course you can, mate. Of course you can. Fuck off.
He's mastered his inner animal, dude. Come on.
No, man. I hate Space Wolves, dude. I can't. The only reason why I don't give the Blood Angels as much shit is because of the werewolf thing. The Blood Angels can't just become vampires and then stop. That's their whole thing, is that they you go insane. Whereas, you know, you got your, yeah, we're all kind of space wolves, we're all kind of wolfing, but we're not really, you know? It's like, yeah, cool, awesome, brilliant. Anyway. Yeah, anyway. Your cynical, non-cynical ones? I know I've taken 2 now, so you're going to be struggling now.
Yeah, my cynical, well, maybe I misinterpreted the request. I was going to say Lehman Russ, because I think it's so likely what's going to happen, right? The what I would like to have come back was, I would probably, like, if you guys didn't mention Korax or Dorn, I think probably the Khan. I want a Primarch to come back and I want Gilliman to have a friend. I want him to have some interesting strategium conversations so we can get a sense of the state of things, right? So my whole thing with Primarchs overall in 40k, yeah, there's an argument that the setting would be probably better without them returning, right? It'd be more quintessentially 40k and grimdark, loss of hope and all of that. But if they are coming back, I think some interesting things can be done with what we could call the story. Now, that's why the way the line's been handled bothers me so much, because I'm just like, what is even the point? Like, nothing's different between the line coming back, and it feels like nothing's changed, right? Like, you might not have even known compared to how Gilliman was handled on his reintroduction to the setting, right? Like, just this might just be like anecdotal or sorry, what's the word? A convenient shoot. I remember the brain fart here. It is rather early, lacking a bit of sleep today. But the point I was going to make was, even the Dark Angels culture doesn't seem to be affected by the Lion, because in the detachment, the Dark Angel detachment that was previewed earlier yesterday, yesterday now, the Lion's Blade Task Force is still, you know, Deathwing and Ravenwing are still tasked with hunting the Fallen. So it feels like if the Lion hasn't even affected the culture of his own chapter, that's what you would expect, at minimum, right? You'd expect these mythic figures, Primarchs, to just change the Imperium, the state of affairs, completely. But this guy hasn't even influenced his chapter, it seems, right? At least for what this is worth, what this detachment's kind of being framed as and how it operates. Still hunting the Fallen. Still...
Well, I'd say on the other side of that, when you said, oh, maybe they shouldn't affect the setting at large. Yeah, they totally should. Like, if you're going to write Primarchs properly, a Primarch coming back, but it goes right back to the central core of my argument, is that 40k is not the same as 30k, right? You can have human Space Marines and human Primarchs in 30k, not a problem, right? Again, don't go too far with it. I don't know what everyone's singing Kumbaya, right? But, you know, there should be a few moments of humanity. You know, the perfect scene of Darviel Loken talking to the press and getting annoyed, right? That's great. That's how it should be. You know, this is the Horus Heresy, or before the Horus Heresy. 40k, no. If you bring back a Primarch, the whole thing needs to burn to the ground, like, or at least start to. You know, it's not end times, but it should start to feel like, oh my god, like this is it, right?
Well,
okay,
I guess that's
the
where it
Imperium
goes,
is going
right?
to go to shit.
Like,
That's where it should go.
So many Primarchs have that baked into their, well, not origin story, but their exit story, right? They will return when the Imperium's at its brink, or whatever version of that you want, right? But on the note,
You know,
well, go ahead.
But they can't even get the antagonist right for the Primarchs, and that's a big part of the problem. Is, like, Abaddon couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. So, you know, like, typical told not shown situation, right? Where it's, oh, he's the big bad, but he achieves nothing all the time, right? Can't even successfully destroy Cadia. You know, he has to crash a Blackstone fortress or whatever into it. Just dumb stuff like that. So you can't even get the antagonist right. You know, there's no foil to the Primarchs. It's a writing problem that goes back to Primaris Marines. I know this strays a bit off the original topic, but it's like Primaris Marines should have been the response to Fabius Bile creating Super Chaos Space Marines. You know, not the other way around where, you know, Belisarius Call just perfectly creates, like, here, instantly, first attempt, Super Marines. When Bile's got, like, he's got access to all of the different Primarch's DNA, he's successfully coined Primarchs, he has had 10,000 years and multiple coins of himself to work with him on these ideas. He's worked with the Dark Eldar and Homoculi. He's also got the powers of the Warp and Biomancy at his disposal. And all of that stuff, it just keeps leading to failure.
Yeah. By all accounts, he should be the one to deviate from the Emperor's template, right? Like, he has all the motivation and you would imagine resources, material or immaterial.
Well, it's a unit that would have made its way onto tabletop so well for Chaos. Enhanced Space Marines as, you know, something similar to Chosen, for example, where it's like Fabius Bile's ultimate creations, rather than it being just this weird unit that he's always gotten in every edition, you know, where it's like, oh, he does a buff for the army this edition, or other times it's, you know, he does a buff for a unit. It's always terribly implemented, right?
Yeah.
But it's like that there is a great foil. You could have a Primarch basically going on the hunt for Fabius. It's like, yeah, he can't match a Primarch for like, raw strength or intellect, but what he does have is 10,000 years of fucking tricks up his sleeve that a Primarch might not expect and will have a hard time adapting to. And he's going to be throwing forces at them that they didn't expect, like Dark Mechanicum and Abominable Intelligences and hybrid, you know, species, all sorts of stuff that like you can have fun with. It's like, and that there is the perfect foil for a Primarch, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, no, I think that's he's ripe land for that role because, as you said, like if he's someone who can clone Primarchs, surely he knows how to contend with them, right? Just through his exposure, he'd probably be it.
And that's just one example of an existing, you know, like Gilliman should be having his hands tied up by Huron Blackheart. Just, you know, the sheer amount of forces the Tyrant, you know, has actually assembled and amassed around the Maelstrom, which is right in Gilliman's home territory. He should be causing all sorts of problems. And I mean, they pop up for all of 5 minutes and captured him successfully in his stupid coming back gathering storm book, which we try not to talk about, right? Speaking of bad writing.
Yeah, it'll be like Gilliman... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that right there, again, is another highly competent antagonist if done well, where it's like Gilliman can basically be in a... I'm pulling my hair out here because I can't seem to create Space Marines as quick as this bastard is killing them.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out on that note that there's a bit of like a beautiful... there's a thematic quality to that that's rather tasteful, in my opinion, because you have Gilliman waking up from the fallout of the heresy, like in the Scouring, right? He wakes up from that only to be assaulted with, like, having to deal with something very... something that's all too familiar, you could say, in Huron Blackheart, right? He's like, I think the echoes of Horus, I think there's a fair case to be made. You can get that with Huron, and then you can have some nice character stuff with Gilliman in such a confrontation, right? But I think at best, all you'll get is like a paragraph or three in like a codex where Gilliman has that encounter, right?
Again, like a Huron is, as, and I'll just dive in on that a little more. Here you got a character who, you know, and I'm no Huron fanboy. Don't really care for them. I'm a Tzeentch fanboy, right? But Huron is a character who's like, he's had a lot of experience. He knows the codex in and out. So he knows Gilliman's playbook pretty well. And because he's hitting from inside of warp storms and the Maelstrom, it's not like you have any one planet that Gilliman can just pin this guy down on. It's not, he's fighting, you know, 4D chess. Which is a fantastic foil that takes away all of those typical Primarch strengths. Like, you know, you face a Primarch in an open battlefield and he's got 10 Marines and you got 1,000. There's still a good chance he'll beat you, just because the Primarch is that much of a force multiplier. But when you're fighting that Primarch on multiple battlefields that he can't get to them all simultaneously, you know, you really dilute his ability to fight back against you. and you're just taking all these constant bites, these nibbles out of
Yeah.
the Imperium, and it's a great microcosm of the conflict that has been tearing down the Imperium for the last 10,000 years. And then that's just two Chaos Astartes. So you don't even have to bring back Primarchs to create a worthy adversary. You can just have Astartes themselves being worthy adversaries. Then you've got Xenos factions. And what has the Silent King been up to since they brought him back? Anyone?
I think he has a
Seems to
book.
have gone awfully
I think he has a
silent.
book coming out. I think it's a few editions late, but
I think if we make Space Marines less human, I think you're solving a lot of issues here. I think then you have no choice but to go to the Silent King, to go to Ivrain, to go to all of these other characters and start writing about them, because you need to pick up that slack.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. Like Space Marines being more human is the issue. Okay, but every book right now is about Space Marines because they're determined to make them relatable. They're determined to make them the main characters when they shouldn't be. They should be appearing in other people's stories. There should be the odd book regarding them that's told from somebody close by, like a serf or someone. It's the reason why the Night Lord's books are so well written is because some of the main characters in them are not Space Marines. You're seeing the Night Lords from the perception of a normal human.
Imagine just a set of like guardsmen popping up in a novel who are just lamenting the fact that they're sick of being hauled off to another one of Gilliman's wars. You could do that. You could have, like a Schaefer's Last Chances type, just a bunch of penal conscripts, who've been dragged off to fight in some conflict that they have no interest in. They're trying to desert from, and they're trying to like make their way off world or something. They're right there. There's a novel idea. Pay me some money, Games Workshop. You got enough. But yeah, I just all of these problems that I see in the war, a lot of it does stem from that trying to humanize Astartes and the double-edged sword of trying to monetize Astartes. Endless monetization.
Yeah.
And the two of them do not work well together because the quickest way to chuck out a story is to make it a Space Marine story. And the quickest way to make a Space Marine story that people want to read is to make them relatable. And the easiest way to make them relatable is to make them just like us.
Yeah, a bit of a Ouroboros,
it all ties together.
Bit of an Ouroboros situation there. It's like the snake that eats itself. You're like, it's what's happening to the setting? It's being incentivized to eat itself. Terrible.
Yeah, or I'm talking out my ass, but I think I'm onto something here.
No, I definitely think you are. I particularly like this idea that imagine Gilliman comes back. You don't have to split the galaxy in this case, right? If you reframe the significant the narrative weight that these antagonists have in the setting, like you did with Huron there, like it would take Gilliman's like superpower to be able to contend and micromanage at such a scale, right? I think that wraps him up. Like I really feel like a lot of people's gut reactions to Primarchs coming back is like they'll come back and then they'll win because they're too powerful. I just feel like, well, if you just have them tied up, right? If you have a Primarch come back and now Corax has to deal with this, right? Lion has to deal with this antagonistic force or element or quality of the galaxy. It could be a force of nature or something more ethereal with the warp or whatever. It doesn't have to be a faction, but I guess Games Workshop wants to sell battle boxes, right? So maybe you do make them all faction based or character based. But then I think if you have them tied up and strained, right, where their strengths are kind of reined in because they can't just abuse their Primarch superpowers. They're all kind of and then you could frame it like Chaos has been waiting to react to these kinds of situations. Like they're not feckless. They know what Gilliman's and the Primarch's strengths were, so they kind of have set the stage, right, in the time past, so that when the Primarchs do return, it's still bleak. It's still a problem. And I wonder if that's why they haven't made GW hasn't had the Lion come back and even chat with Gilman to formulate a strategy or a plan of action, because I suspect they don't know what to do with that interaction. For one.
Yeah, I think again, back to how human should these guys be, right? So I think another way you can frame the question, to bring it back around to what we were saying, is how relatable should these guys be? And if they're all setting up plans that are going to affect the entire setting, we need to be in their heads, or at least around them. And again, I think you're losing a lot of what the Primarchs are supposed to be. Simple act of bringing them back. Mm-hmm. And if you do bring them back, making them relatable and making them so that you're literally talking to them in one of your books, right? Like it shouldn't. It's far too like the Iron Hands. You guys have been getting a lot of props in this video because you never get them from Games Workshop, so maybe you can get a few here. But the Iron Hands are literally the A1 example of what every single Space Marine chapter should look like. You can have different flavors of this. I'm not saying they all have to be like the Carcharodons or the Iron Hands to a vast extent. What I'm saying is that you should be a dark mirror of what you were supposed to be. Mm-hmm. If the Blood Angels are just the same Blood Angels that you had in the Horus Heresy, but with a few angry bits attached to them, that's not enough, man.
I was just going to make that point if you didn't. It's like...
That's not enough.
And also, what that does for the Heresy, and that invigorates the Heresy as a setting compared to 40k, because now it's very novel to go back and see, like, whoa, this is what the Salamanders used to be? How noble, right? And whereas in 40k, like, as you're describing, if they're a bit more cold than logical, pun not intended, you would have something to contrast against their heresy counterparts for all legions, right? I think that.
Well, it needs to be the Imperium of the monkey paw. Oh, the Blood Angels moved on after Sanguinius's death. Finger curls menacingly. Yeah. And then like cut scene, and then they are like literally ripping the throats out of civilians with their bare teeth. Like, okay, they didn't move on well. Mm-hmm. It's that's what we wish.
Moved
isn't it?
Forward, but downward. Right.
Yes.
There's an interesting like irony to 40k's setting becoming more like the Horus Heresy, and the Horus Heresy game becoming more like 40k. That tickles my brain a little bit. If those rumors are true, if they're going to follow the same kind of design philosophy, I can't help it. That's like the simulation winking at us, like what the hell is happening?
It's money, man. It's money.
Incentives, pushing things like in the worst of ways, in both cases, but on different spectrums, right?
Make it homogenized.
It leaves you with
the same,
just one. If true, these are all rumors, right? The Horus Heresy 3.0 stuff is nothing's confirmed,
it's rumored,
right? Yeah.
No, nothing's confirmed.
Well, there's hope. Let's get our hopes way up. That's what I like to do.
Absolutely, bro. Hope away.
How are you guys for time?
Okay. I've got until about past before I've got to start prepping for another student screaming about the grades going down. But yeah.
You guys feel like wrapping it up here?
No, up to you, man. I'm cool either way.
How are you, Maka?
I'm easy.
Sunday morning.
Well, if we've reached a natural endpoint, why not wrap it up? We've been going for an hour and a half, so we can do the outro thing. Do you guys... Okay, listeners, if you've tuned in for this long, don't forget, I'll put links in the description to Outer Circle and Northern Exile's channels on the YouTubes. Do you guys have any videos in the pipeline? Anything you want to tease out? I'm going to probably publish this on the weekend, if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah, all good. I mean, I have 5 videos a week. Well, it'll be 4 this week, but I'm going away for a little bit. But I have 5 videos a week talking about hobby nightmares in general and things like that. So we go into people's experience in the hobby. If you've ever had a bad 40k game, playing against somebody who really got up your nose. Catharsis, sweet catharsis is what we offer on our channel, and a lot of rantage about 40k too. So, yeah, a lot of professional griping. Love it. Give it in me veins. That's what we do over here.
How about you, Mako?
I don't have any interesting videos in the works. I'm just creating videos I feel like at the moment, and so I'm creating a lot less content than I used to. Not because I don't want to create anything, but more just I'm only creating when something feels right to create, typically, rather than just creating just to keep up content output. I'm not that kind of person. Obviously, it's not my primary source of income or anything. So I've got a couple live streams. I've got 2 more in 3D printing, just one about talking about a bit of the history and like how machines have evolved in just the last few years alone, and one talking about the sort of materials themselves and thoughts on that. And they'll be live stream videos. And of course, I've got the reworks that are going on in the background for the Horus Heresy system that basically my friends and I have sort of just very over this system, and just the lack of, like, the painful lack of support from the company towards trying to fix the issues. They just seem very much to just drop the system out their ass and then forget about it. And then if there's enough complaints, then they go, okay, we'll bring out a new edition to address those complaints.
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of.
No, that's there is it seems fairly evident that Games Workshop will withhold quality of life changes to prop up the next edition. It seems like that's the model, right? Especially systematic changes. Like, that's just the way the rules are this edition. It's obviously flawed, and then we'll keep adding stratagems for 40k to have units ignore terrain because it's problematic. Clearly,
they hate hot fixes. Like, video game developers know that they have to, like, patch in things to change up their game when, like, there's imbalances or things are outright broken. And that's hard, right? It requires a lot of people and a lot of time, and when you fix something, you break something else, right, when it comes to code. But a tabletop war game from a company that is so established, you know, and it's so simple what you're writing in comparison to a video game.
Yeah, they aren't hurting for resources
this
either.
This shit should be written by an algorithm at this point. And a human should just be going in to just tweak it and go, nah, this like, the computer spat out these numbers, but they don't feel right. I think we should tweak them to this. You know, that's where they should be at as a company, because it's like, you've got fundamentally the same game system for 40 years. D6 system, you know, with basically the same number stat values and very much the same measuring system as being in, well, since 2nd edition 40k is when we moved away from, like, the 4 and 5 inch movement to Marines up to the 6 inches, you know, like, fundamentally not a lot has changed. It's like, surely you've got a few things that, you know, you could, and I've showed it before, how it could easily be done just using Excel to create a Space Marine where it's like, cool, you add this point in weapon skill, look, the points automatically adjusted upwards. And it's like, oh, I want to add even more points in that. Or hang on a minute, they're growing exponentially now for the Marine, how much he costs, because obviously, you know, strength or toughness 10 is worth a lot more than strength and toughness 1 is. It's like, it can be done. So I find it very infuriating when they won't go back, and even just simple quality of life fixes. Like, they still haven't fixed Storm Durkin, which is something I came up with before. I think I came up with it before Heresy 2.0 even officially dropped or launched, because I'd been leaked the playtest, and that's where, because of the way the rules are written, you can load a Storm Eagle up with a unit of infantry and then load that Storm Eagle into a Storm Bird. So it's like the Durkin, you know, where you stuff a turkey with a duck that's been stuffed with a chicken. Yeah, so it's Storm Durkin. And they still haven't FAQ'd that. It's like, it's 3 years into the system, or 2.5 years into the system, like, you know, basic FAQ quality of life stuff. And instead, all they want to address in their FAQs is the reactions mechanic, which is, like, the one fundamental change they made to the system is they bought in a system and it's broken as shit. And all, like, the stats and points, like, everyone unceasingly, I should say, complains about dreadnoughts. And they're like, no, we're not going to go and FAQ that. fix the points or anything. No, fuck that. That's for losers, and this company's for winners. It's, and yeah. So no, I play the game. I play it all the time. I've been playing it for nearly 13 years. Their version of the game of 30k. I've been playing for 13 years since day zero, right? And prior to that, I was playing fan-made editions. So I'm very much into it. And it's the last Games Workshop game that they run that I'm really into. And so if anyone can fix it, I guess it should be us. Because I don't want all my models to go to waste.
I think in an amazing way when you asked us, what have you got going on your channel? And I just said, I've got five things I'm going to be doing, I don't know. And then it's like, Mac is like, I'm not doing any videos, but how about I just do one now?
Yeah, right.
Like, you want to know what Macca's channel is like? Then you literally just got a 5-minute preview. That was awesome.
Perfect.
Hopefully it didn't turn you off too much.
Yeah, I think house rules are cool. 3D printing is cool. There's cool stuff going on the Outer Circle, most definitely.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's only whining. No solutions. Whining. The internet never fails to tell me that every single day.
All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in for our second collaborative chat, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
You later, guys.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on this collaborative hobby chat. If you enjoyed this video, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And as always, a special thanks to Julius Maximus, as well as my other generous patrons and channel members. Patrons and channel members get early access to videos. Just a little something for those who help keep the dream alive. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.